Backfield. Russell throws inside. Oh my God, he's picked off. A shot to the heart of every Seahawks fan. Russell rolls right, throws to the back corner of the end zone. Bryce Hager very nearly picked that off.
You got a little fired up on the sidelines. Who were you, John, with, and what were y'all discussing?
I was making sure Pete knew that we're not comfortable with you throwing the ball at the one. We go out there, we sacrifice, we battle. You don't give away our battle. You honor our sacrifice.
You are undermining your head coach in front of the media.
That was one of our guys who's got as much emotion as you could ever want.
What's our rule? Protect the team. Protect the team. It goes both ways, and that's what me and Pete talked about.
Seattle has listened to some trade calls for Richard Sherman.
We're going to try to keep our core together as much as we possibly can. There's going to be a really hard decision or two that's going to be coming with people that we love.
I said, you'll miss me when I'm gone,
What you've seen lately in the news is real. That's on both sides.
Richard Sherman initiated this. I mean, he was the one that said, hey, why don't you see if you could find a new home for me?
He knows what's going on. We know what's going on. I don't know if anything would ever happen.
Sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do to prove a point.
Well, there's a fascinating article in ESPN the magazine, which will be on stands June 2nd. Richard Sherman can't let it go. The Sherman story. It's available on ESPN.com right now, and ESPN the magazine senior writer Seth Wickersham joins us. Seth, I read the article and it was fascinating because to me the essence of it came down to 2 points. Number one, just how ultra competitive Richard Sherman is in every aspect when it comes to football, like every play at practice. And then the fact that that interception in that Super Bowl is still something that he's having a difficult time getting past, and it has created a fractured relationship between him and his head coach.
I think that the hardest thing in the NFL is to sustain success after you win a Super Bowl, and probably the next hardest thing is to try to rebound from a catastrophic loss. And there's no question that it did. I mean, it wasn't just a Super Bowl loss. It was the pain of a dynasty being thwarted at the 1 yard line. They thought they were going to make people forget the steel curtain. They were going to beat Peyton Manning and Tom Brady in consecutive Super Bowls,
yeah.
And that was going to be the end of the discussion. And it ended. And so I think that because they haven't gotten back, and because they've lost in the divisional round of the playoffs, it's made everything worse, and it all comes back to that play.
Well, it's interesting. That's the play he says he can't let go, the interception and the decision to throw it at the one, and obviously he made the comments after they tried it again in the Thursday night game against the Rams. Yeah. In working on this story, what was the one thing that surprised you about how difficult it's been for Richard to get past that one play?
It's the question of why. And I think that it's, you have Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson. They're two very extreme personalities, and Sherman is also. But Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson are extremely positive thinkers. Pete Carroll's entire book goes back to all the moments when he's been broken in his entire outstanding career and how he managed to flush that pain. And I think that mentality has almost made things harder on the people who have had a hard time letting it go. Like a couple years ago when they lost to Carolina in the playoffs, they got down bad early,
28
rallied.
points.
Yeah, rallied, came up short. In the locker room after the game, Carroll said, if we had just had one more minute, we would have had it, guys. And the defense is galled at that because they're running out of minutes. The window doesn't last very long in the NFL.
Well, they were trying to be, Teddy, the first team to repeat since your Patriots did it. Yeah. If something like that had happened to you, now you obviously had different heartbreak in the 2007 season.
Right, lost 2 Super Bowls, 96 also. So
yeah, how difficult would that have been for you to overcome the way it played out as a defensive player yourself?
Well, I think you have to just understand. I was told by coaches throughout the course of my career, a lot of things happen on the sideline, a lot of things are done, a lot of things are said. Don't take it personal. Because in the heat of the moment, plays are called, defenses are called, things are said, insults are said also, only because everyone has the goal to win the football game. Do you trust that everyone on your team does what they can to win that football game? Don't take it personal. And if you do, you can move on. But Richard Sherman, it sounds like, takes everything personal, especially that play, especially the way things are being handled with Russell Wilson. I read the article. It was a great article, a lot of insight in terms of what goes on, how they feel about Russell, how Russell's treated as a quarterback. So much is taken personal. That's the mistake right there. Right. He just needs to he needs to take a step back and realize Everyone has the same goals as he does, but they just approach them in different ways.
Well, you brought up an interesting point, and that's the other underlying thing here. The current that Richard and other players feel that Russell Wilson is held to a different set of standards than the rest of the team is, Bill. And if that's a situation, if you're the general manager and that is a perception out there, how do you change that? How do you fix that part of it?
Well, the perception shouldn't be there. In 32 teams in the league, or those that have good quarterbacks, let's put it that way, the quarterback's held to a different standard. He shouldn't be criticized publicly, never. He's got too much on his plate. He's too much of a lightning rod. And what's usually done with a quarterback who's in a slump or not doing things as well as he should have, he's called in, the quarterback coach sits down with him, the head coach may sit down with him. So to me, that's just a situation that you address very simply up front. Now, Sherman's a volatile guy. Pete has always had to let the players have their say. And there's a byproduct of that. On the one hand, it's interesting, it's exciting, it makes for a lot of good stories. On the other hand, it can rub you raw from time to time. There can be conflict from time to time. That's just the way Pete does things. The key here is that, and I'm an expert, I'm probably the world's greatest expert on losing Super Bowls. Lost 5 of them. So bottom line is, you got to get past it. You never forget it, but you got to get past it. And that's what Richard has to do. He's got to get past that. If you dwell on it, nothing good can come of it.
And the public criticism of the quarterback, I completely agree with. But inside the buildings, that those players see that the quarterback can also get that type of criticism that I get in my meeting room is also very valuable. In that article, I played for Pete, and he did name days, competition Wednesday, turnover Thursday, no repeat Friday, all of that. And now he has something called Tell the Truth Monday. It was interesting how some players said it's Tell the Truth to certain players Monday.
Right.
I think what I found fascinating was the portrait of this chaos that has sort of reigned over the Seattle locker room, even during good times. Mm-hmm. You referenced the night before the Super Bowl victory over Denver, the fight the receivers had. And I'm wondering, based on your time there, is this crescendoing and is it about to crash, or is it the same as it's always been and now we're finding out about it? And is it sustainable? If it can, I mean, we heard, Richard Sherman publicly mentioned in trade talks. Does that indicate
brought
something
up by him, by the way?
That something is possibly ending soon there, or is this just the way it's always going to be as long as these players and these coaches are
It's
there?
a great question, and I don't know. I mean, obviously, we all know that the window doesn't last very long in the NFL. I think that, the receivers not only had a fist fight the night before the Super Bowl, but people on the team thought it was a sign of unity that news of the fist fight didn't get out immediately. Yeah.
There's actually some truth to that. I mean, there really is. They were, in some way, remind me of the Cowboys of the 90s, except the Cowboys found a way to win 3 out of 4 years, and win back-to-back Super Bowls. So that's the difference here. But some teams do tend to thrive on that chaos.
You got to look at the whole continuum. You look at the Bronx Zoo back in the 70s
with
Reggie
the Yankees
Jackson,
and Billy Martin, George Steinbrenner,
et cetera. Great team, won a lot. The Cowboys, you're right, they're a great team. They won a lot. Crazy personalities. This is the same thing with a coach who sort of lets them be themselves and doesn't pay too much attention to it. And I think in the long run, personalities are what they are. Each team takes on its own personality. And this is business as usual. It's not going to change.
It also gets to the heart of how we define success. You're talking about one play that if it goes the other way, you see the Seahawks totally differently. And I mean,
well, you see the
bring
Patriots
it up.
You see the Patriots completely differently.
They can't win another Super Bowl.
I'm not bringing up old wounds. I mean, if your Buffalo Bills teams win one of the 4, they talked about one of the great teams of all time, right?
Yeah.
So that
exactly right.
A play goes the wrong way, all of a sudden the entire history of the game is
perception of
different.
the Super Bowl being the Super Bowl winner being this invincible champion, and the loser of the Super Bowl being worse than the 2-14 team is the perception that we live with in the media and in the fan world, but it's not true.
Now, going forward here, I only see 2 things that can happen here. It's either they win a lot this year, or because if they lose, this volatility is going to come out.
It'll explode.
Or somebody has to go.
Yeah.
And that someone is not going to be the quarterback.
No.
That's the downside of volatility. If you win, it's great. If you
Winning's
don't,
the ultimate deodorant, isn't that what we always say?
Exactly right. If you don't, then it creates real problems.
Just so people understand the things that would have changed if that Super Bowl had gone the way of the Seahawks, Pete Carroll will be the sole coach in the history of football to have multiple championships at the collegiate level and at the NFL level. That's it.
He's two decisions going differently from winning 3 straight college championships and 2 straight in the NFL.
Unbelievable. It's a great read. Seth Wickersham, we appreciate you being with us.
Job.
But we should point out, not everybody thought it was as great as read as we did, including one of Richard Sherman's teammates, Michael Bennett, who's always interesting. This article is trash and should be on TMZ. It's all gossip. I'm surprised it came from you. I love Dane's Russell Wilson. Great teammate and friend and even better human. I was at his house last week, and he gave me barbecue ribs. Ribs, the ultimate bridge builder.